This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome everybody to week 6 of our CISA book club. Looks like we're about halfway through it now. That time flies when we're having fun, huh? Our slide deck count has kind of snowballed into quite a lot of slides, so we're going to try to go a little quicker through kind of the top overview ones. There are a few new ones, but we've got 30 questions we'll try to get through too. So with that, let's go ahead and start jumping through these. So here's our schedule. You can see we're about halfway through. We've done 1 through 5, so we started a new domain here. We're in domain 3. To me, this isn't one of the tougher domains. I always thought the governance one was the toughest one, and as we go along here, I actually think the domains get a little bit easier, so hopefully we'll see that in some of the questions here. Here's kind of a highlight of where we're at page-wise. And I don't know if we've had anybody else who's signed up for the exam. That would be nice to hear if you have. But that's always nice to pull the trigger on that to get yourself in deep and.
I signed up.
Woohoo! Good job.
Don't ask me what the date is, but it's in the end of April sometime. But I did get it.
You know what? Dia has signed up for April as well.
Yeah, I signed up for like April 20th or something like that, and I'm like,
You can do it. You can do it.
I can do it. I can do it.
Awesome. That's good news. So this right here is just an overview of the chapter headings from the Peter Gregory book. I don't know if you wanted to add anything from those notes on the side there, Sherry.
Yeah, just gave a real high-level description of the different areas. The middle one is, of course, very easy. Everybody could probably recite that one in their sleep. But I thought, especially the system development lifecycle one, where Asaka is going to try to confuse us with those particular terms, you might want to look through those and just kind of be familiar with those for the exam.
And this will, if anybody's new to it this week, these slides will be available after we finish today's meeting.
So what I did was, one of the things that Clark did last week was he added a slide that was, or actually flashcards that we could go to. And I had been using the flashcards for a while and thought that that was one of the things that was on our list, didn't realize it wasn't. But I found that they have some interesting points to remember for each one of the little sections. So on online auditing techniques, when you get questions about these, keep in mind audit trail, snapshot, early detection of error and irregularities, audit hook, identifying transactions per predefined criteria, CIS. So remembering some of these will really help you to hone in on what they're looking for and some of just kind of a high-level table to look at. And on the next slide, we've got check.
Hey, Sherry, a quick question.
Okay.
On the flashcards, and I've been trying to play catch up this last week to get up to speed because I missed a couple of meetings, so I'm going to go back and watch them. But have you guys been doing, like, every meeting then create, certain number of flashcards, or is that something in the reading that people are just doing on their own, going through and just, based on different definitions or whatnot, they're creating a flashcard? Or do we have a bunch of flashcards already created?
Actually, there's a link to a online resource for flashcards that we added this week, and the link for that will be in a later slide here. I can email it direct. But generally, over the weeks, we've just basically been, we've had some kind of top-level stuff, and then we will go through some practice questions, and a lot of times we'll get into some healthy discussion on strategy for answering these practice questions.
Awesome.
Yeah, so
it's going to be helpful.
This was just something that I found within the flashcards that I thought was really interesting because if you really look at the questions that you go through, they really, if you understand this level about these items, you can pretty much pick which one they're looking for as far as the answers go. and I'm not going to read this whole thing to you on this one, but you'll have access to this. And I would say that read through this one and understand check digits. And I tried to highlight just the quick snippet parts of it. And if you go to the next page, this one is about parity, checksum, CRC, and points to remember on that. So again, these are just easier ways to remember and looking at the difference. I remember I saw a question on atomicity. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, and I actually guessed it correctly, which surprised me. So just be familiar with these terms, because these are things that I've seen regularly in the test questions.
So Sherry, this is Gene. So can I just re-ask Mark's question? Hey, so we don't. Do we have a set of flashcards now, or is it just the online link?
It's actually in one of the last pages of this presentation that you can get from us.
Okay.
There's a link to a bunch of different online resources, and the flashcards are literally a website that someone who I believe speaks maybe not English as their first language created a lot of it. So there are some things you have to kind of look through and figure out. But for the most part, they give you some really good just salient points to remember to help you get through the exam.
So this page here that we're looking at, that's a flashcard you pulled from the online link?
It is, yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And the next one. So this Agile Development, again, we know a whole lot about that. One of the things, that you may not realize, or you probably do, is that without Agile Development, I saw a question that talks about what is the major drawback to it, and they're saying that it's lack of documentation. So, it's just looking through these and picking up some of the keywords you think they may be looking for is really helpful. And the next slide. Object-oriented system development, same exact thing. I saw some questions on encapsulation. So just, again, for these particular items, being familiar with these terms is really helpful to do. And again, more of the same.
I would say these are the most complex flashcards I've ever seen.
I know.
A lot of data on there. So, yeah.
There really is. And in some cases, there were a bunch of advertisements between them, so I had to kind of cut and paste between all the ads that were there. But they really are helpful because they give you the keywords to each one of those things. So if you just remember the keywords, you'll do really well.
And also that points to remember looks like good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Advantage of prototyping, cost and time savings. Top up testing, that's interesting. Initial phases of prototyping. So yeah, keep in mind those, and that those keywords will be helpful.
That brings up another point too. We've kind of brought this up in the past, but that Peter Gregory book has got that CD with a ebook in it, and that ebook, it's a PDF file. So if you are coming up with terms you're not familiar with, you can have that ebook open. You can just do a quick word search in it, and occasionally you'll find a term that shows up in some of these non-Peter Gregory sponsored practice questions that will have a term that's not in the Peter Gregory book at all, and that's where Google's going to be your friend.
Decision support system, there's not a lot that I've seen on this one yet, but again, here are a few things that they're saying really remember these for the exam. I don't have much experience with decision support systems. I don't know if anybody else does.
I can never make a decision, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean it's yeah. I mean I think it's along the lines of being able to have being able to capture and do analytics on data that's flying all over the place, and being able to use it to support your decision-making process, right? So you can make an informed, intelligent decision. It's easier said than done, of course, but
Alrighty, so we'll jump into the questions here, unless there's nothing else. So this question, I thought this was very PCI and PII-esque for everyone. I think on this question, the key terms to remember are, outside vendor, sensitive data, and production. So this one, I think, is fairly easy peasy. Anyone want to take a stab at this one? And for anyone who's new to this week, kind of what we recommend you do as we go through these, even if you don't, participate verbally, just, read the question in your mind and try to answer it, and just see how you do as we go along here. Can I pick on you, Mark?
Say that again, Clark, sorry.
Oh, do you want to take a stab at this question?
Well, I would have to preface this before I read it as Clark kept saying how easy all these questions were going to be for me, but as I've been going through it this week, I'm about a 50% chance if I haven't reviewed the material. So let's see what it says here.
This one's easy. You'll get it.
I will read this one. Let's see. Yeah. The assistant testing a core banking system being acquired. An organization has provided the vendor with sensitive data from its existing production system. An IS auditor's primary concern is that the data should be, I would say my gut is sanitized.
We're John this week.
Or, I guess it could be, they could also say complete maybe, but I would go with sanitized.
Ding, ding, ding,
Ding, ding, ding, ding.
All right.
All righty, next one.
Whew, I feel better now.
Yeah.
All right, somebody else.
All right, which of the following is the primary purpose for conducting parallel testing? I think this is a good one also to kind of review every answer on this, kind of the pros and cons, but I'll just kind of step through this real quick. A would not be the best choice in this, because when you're doing parallel testing, that is not the cheapest thing to do, because obviously you're running two systems side by side. And when you're talking about B, that's really more narrow in scope, and it's more testing individual components as opposed to a full parallel testing. C, not a completely wrong answer, but it's a little bit of apples and oranges, which would leave us with D, which would be the correct answer on this one. And here's their explanation. The purpose of parallel testing is to ensure that the implementation of a new system will meet user requirements. Parallel testing may show that the old system is, in fact, better than the new system, but it is not the primary reason. Unit and system testing are completed before parallel testing. Program interfaces with files are tested for errors during system testing. And I think you'll run into a lot of questions where they talk about parallel testing and cutover testing, and you really need to know the pros and cons between all the various testing forms. This one's kind of creeps to a little bit of the next week's material, because this one really is related to pages 274 to 275. But which of the following data validation edits is effective in detecting transposition and transcription errors? And I think Sherry, those are your notes right there on the side?
They are. I added to the left what the flashcard would say, so you can see what was on the flashcard and what the answer was for this particular question, because it was talking specific about check digits.
This one should be really easy. I think the key word here is they're talking about a bank and what that kind of implies. Anyone want to take a stab at this one? I think since we're talking about a bank, we're really 2-year-old backup tapes. That's not really that relevant. I mean, a 2-year-old backup tape might be fine. Data backups, we don't really know the frequency. I mean, if it's an ERP, it isn't necessarily real transactional, so the data backups once a day might be perfectly fine. Limited documentation, it seems like you'll see this one as kind of a false answer a lot of times, where, you know, it's there, but it's limited, so probably not the most critical answer. And because we're dealing with a bank, access controls are going to be key. So in the answer, they're basically, you know, honing on the fact that it's a financial organization, so the lack of controls, access controls would be critical. I thought this one was a little bit tougher. An organization decides to purchase a software package instead of developing it. In such a case, the design and development phases of a traditional software development lifecycle would be replaced with.
Yeah, this one was interesting as well. So we already have to do feasibility and requirements. So that's nothing that you would replace. And you're not going to have to, you know, so implementation and testing phases, that's also something that you wouldn't be replacing within a life cycle. And of course, replacement not required, nothing. That's obviously not the right one. So selection and configuration phases, they are actually something that you would add to that specific to looking for a purchase of a software package.
And I think we've gone over this point too. When the first time I read this question, I thought, like when I got just past that first sentence, I thought, oh, the escrow account, and you know, escrow is going to be in here. But a lot of times you'll see escrow thrown in with these, you know, software packages that are developed. User specifications for projects using traditional SDLC methodology have not been met. An IS auditor looking for a car should look in which of the following areas?
B. If it's traditional, they're talking about waterfall, and so if the oh no user specifications. So they did the user specifications. Okay.
Maybe A.
Develop. I'd say A or C.
So I think we did a good job kind of eliminating a couple of those. We're kind of moving kind of slow here, so I'm going to jump ahead here. So that one's going to be C. Number 7, I think this one is probably the easiest question you're going to see today. So, I mean, they're talking about thin clients, so basically all the eggs are going to be in one basket. So it's going to be D.
D, yeah.
I think that one's a little bit tougher. Which of the following procedures should be implemented to help ensure the completeness of inbound transactions via EDI? And I have a note on here that says the answer wants to be timely. So they're going with control totals built into the trailer record of each segment is the only option that will ensure all individual transactions are sent and received completely. The other options provide supporting evidence, but their findings are either incomplete or not timely. And on this one, you're going to run into a few times where you're going to need to know the differences between the different types of charts.
Yeah, that'd be a PERT. I think that'd be a PERT chart. That's what they're looking for there.
And
And on this
looks
one,
like
I added a little chart to the bottom left. This table is really good because it really does narrow it down. So if they're actually asking anything about project duration or timelines, they're talking PERT. If they're talking about monitoring progress, they're talking Gantt. Earned value, it's budget, actual spending, estimate to complete, estimate at completion. Function point analysis is going to be the answer for any questions that talk about estimating size. And time box would be anything for preventing cost overruns and delivery delays. So this is a real good chart to focus on for study.
And that's, I know this answer sheet's kind of busy here, but you can kind of see a visual example of the PERT and the Gantt diagrams here too. I noticed one other thing here too, when I was researching this Gantt thing, sometimes that's spelled differently. I've seen it spelled G-H-A-N-T. Peter Gregory spells it G-A-N-T-T. That's some food for thought in case you want to research that. Yeah, none of us have ever heard the term scope creep before, have we? Procedures to prepare scope creep should be baselined in which of the following systems development lifecycle phases? I think a good exercise in this. I'm sorry, say again?
No, I was reading the question aloud just to get a handle on it.
I think a good exercise in this one is to basically number the A, B, and C and kind of the logical sequence they should go into.
Yeah, I agree. So my vote would be D, feasibility.
Yeah, I think the order should be D, C, A, B if we're putting those kind of in order here. And they did not like D because I think feasibility is really kind of beforehand. Feasibility is really a study to see, is this project worth doing? And I think that's kind of prior to scope creep is what I think they're after on this question.
Oh, design.
To prevent uncontrolled entry of new requirements into a system being developed, a standard process for authorization, approval, and testing and documentation is necessary. Such procedures are baselined in the design phase and modified in accordance with the needs of the organization. In the development phase, the design specifications are used to program the system that will support specific organizational processes. The implementation phase is too late, and the feasibility phase is too early for establishing.
Oh, I see. I see what they're saying. I see what they're doing. So they're feasibility is where let's look at the really broad picture and see if it can all hang together, and then they're carving off projects out of that for a defined scope of work. So okay, that now it makes sense.
Okay, they sold you, huh?
Yeah, they did.
I think this is a little bit tougher. Which of the following groups should assume ownership of a systems development project and the resulting system? And we might want to talk through the answer on this because this is kind of one I'm kind of still struggling with. User management assumes ownership of the project and the resulting system. They should review and approve deliverables as they are defined and accomplished. Senior management approves the project and the resources needed to complete it. The project steering committee provides overall direction and is responsible for monitoring costs and timetables. Systems development management provides technical support.
Now, on this one, I found this one kind of easy personally because when you assume ownership, I think of the business as being the ownership of the applications, telling the IT teams or development teams what it is they need to process their business through the organization. So they should really be the people who own it because they're the ones who are going to have to determine what it is that needs to do, whereas systems development is concerned about making sure that they answer the requirements and the design, et cetera. Senior management, again, making sure that it's paid for, resources are needed, or that are there. Of course, project steering committee as well. So to me, user management on that one seems easy. But that's only one of the only ones I felt easy on here. So.
For me, I think what threw me off is when they're calling it development projects. And I felt like user management was after the fact on that, but I'll defer to Sherry on this question.
I don't know why. I think it's because I lived that world where we had a software development shop go rogue, and they felt like they were building a tool, and they didn't care if it processed our business or not. And that's where the user management team has got to step up and say, wait a minute, if your tool doesn't process my business, I don't need your tool. We're trying to run a business here. Here's our core process that we're trying to do, and this is what it needs to do. So it's really about who's in charge on that one.
This next question is an example of a term that is not in the Peter Gregory book. At least I couldn't find it. Peer reviews to detect software errors during a program development activity are called. Emulation would not even be in the ballpark, I don't think, on that one.
Yeah, my vote would be either B or C. Peer reviews, structured walkthroughs, modular. I'd say B.
Ding, ding, ding.
Woo!
And there's kind of some more, another definition for it from another source. An organization is implementing a new system to replace a legacy system. Which of the following conversion practices creates the greatest risk? This one should be easy peasy.
Let's do it all at once. Let's just go for it.
Yeah, let's pull that trigger. I think we've landed on C. I think this is a good one to look at all the answer choices too. Functionality is a characteristic associated with evaluating the quality of software products throughout their life cycle and is best described as the set of attributes that bear on the existence of a set of functions and their specified properties, ability of the software to be transferred from one environment to another, capability of software to maintain its level of performance under stated conditions, or D, relationship between the performance of the software and the amount of resources used. I kind of struggle a little bit with A and C on this one.
Yeah, and B is really more about the portability of it.
Yeah.
Versus the quality.
Right.
Yeah.
We're going to land on A on that one.
I like the way they narrowed that one down to portability, reliability, and efficiency. I thought that was a really good way to boil those down.
Yeah. The phases and deliverables of a system development lifecycle project should be determined during the initial planning stages of the project, after early planning has been completed but before work has begun, throughout the work stages based on risk and exposures, only after all risks and exposures have identified and the IS editor has recommended appropriate controls. So on this one, D, I think, is pretty easy to throw out because that one's way after the fact, which kind of leads us to A, B, and C. And on this one, I think on answer A, which is the answer on this one, I guess you'd need to make sure you're on that one that it doesn't include feasibility. And that one doesn't, so we're going to go with A on that one.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that one.
Which of the following best describes the objectives of following a standard system development methodology? This one, I thought it was a little bit tougher to differentiate some of the choices here.
So it seems the focus is process skills.
C is the only one that provides a means of auditing project development.
Oh, Sean is here. We missed your sound effects earlier.
Ding!
Sean is just like batting 1,000 here.
I think I said C, but
Give me a pass on that one. Which of the following testing methods is most effective during the initial phases of prototyping? And this is another one where the answer is not super well defined in the Peter Gregory book.
In the initial phases of prototyping.
Yeah, so I mean, because we're saying
So
initial phase,
yeah, I'd say A or D. Prototyping, though.
yeah, I mean, we could definitely throw out B on that one.
Well, in volume, I mean, typically that's, yeah, okay, there you go.
Sorry, I jumped ahead here because we're watching the clock here also.
Yeah, understood.
I've read this one several times, and I'm not sure I still really get this particular answer.
Yeah, I thought this was kind of a tougher question. And this one's a little bit tougher because there's a lot of questions that are kind of similar to this, where, you know, the answer will be something to the effect of make a note of it in your final report. When reviewing the quality of an IS department's development process, the IS auditor finds that she does not use any formal documented methodology and standards. The IS auditor's most appropriate action would be to
This is another one where I didn't like the answer.
Yeah. Yeah, again, I didn't really like this because of a lot of the other example questions we've seen where it'll have that kind of standard answer, which I just noted.
Right.
So they're going with C.
Yeah, and I wouldn't think that it would be the auditor's job to document standards.
Yeah.
And so I thought this answer was really bad.
Can you quickly go back to the questions to see? Oh, never mind. Well, let's just move on.
Okay. Sorry, my thing is, I don't know why it's not forwarding here. There it goes.
Which of the following would be the greatest concern?
I think this is an easy question. Okay, Sean, we're calling on you.
I'll randomly guess B. A quality plan is not part of the contracted deliverables.
Ding, 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 ding.
Ah.
The business case for a project should answer which of the following questions? Easy peasy. We kind of discussed this concept a few questions ago.
I would say the first one.
Yep, this is also kind of another term here I think we could use is we could substitute business case for feasibility. Which of the following job titles is generally not a part of project management steering committees?
I would say QA.
Yep, that's a good one to kind of think through. I mean, that one's kind of after the fact. which of the following project initiation communication meetings may be used by the project manager to inform the team of what has to be done for the project?
Okay, go.
Yeah, we use that all the time, that term. In Peter Gregory, what I did notice is that kickoff, they don't spell it with a space in it. It's just, you know, KICKOFF without a space. So if you're trying to search for kick-off in Peter Gregory, you're not going to find it. Here's another chart question. An initial business case would generally derive from which of the following? Pretty easy to eliminate a few of those there. And here's kind of an example of how Gantt was spelled differently. Oh, I'm sorry, it's feasibility study.
You have to decide about the initial business case. And business case and feasibility study are interchangeable.
Right. I focused on that Gantt thing that drove me crazy. Anyways, yeah, initial business case, feasibility. Very similar to a couple questions ago. I thought this question was kind of a bit silly. I think I just gave away the answer. The objective of program management is the successful execution of programs which include the management of all of which of the following. And for us, all of those I think would be valid answers. But for this question, they're going to go with politics.
Politics.
Which of the following? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I said whoever runs into politic issues. And anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Which of the following is generally not considered one of the objectives of project portfolio management? And I think you're going to see a bunch of these questions, and you kind of need to distinguish between project and portfolio. So when they're talking about project portfolio, they're talking about kind of the bigger picture here. And so as we're going through these answers, when we're talking about an individual project, that really is kind of below the level of portfolio. So watch on these types of questions, watch for the wording of these. Which of the following is defined as all the projects being carried out in an organization at
Clark, what was the answer to the last one? I couldn't quite tell from the click there, and I didn't get to read it. Which one are you clicking on? I can't tell which one you're clicking on. What was the answer?
Sorry, there's like landscapers out the window for the leaf blower right now. This particular question bank did not label these A, B, and C. So
no, but on the prior question, I think it was. Okay, never mind. I'll look at it on the replay.
Okay. Something's wrong here. You know, I think I read that wrong. I wasn't looking for the exception. We're looking at the inclusive one, so it is project portfolio. Thanks for catching that, Mark, because you see how it's right here? That's really A. I think I defined it correctly, but that wasn't really what the question was asking. Sorry if I missed.
And what was the answer on the exception? The exception one, what was the answer?
The exception would be, sorry,
Oh, yeah, question 25.
Sorry,
Go back one, there you go.
Yeah, my screen is being real slow here, I'm sorry. The exception would be the project sponsorship because it's just at the project level.
Okay, perfect. That's what I was thinking, but I got lost. Okay, cool. Thanks.
All right, we got 2 questions out of 1 on that one. Which of the following is defined as all the projects being carried out in an organization at any given point in time? We just kind of gave this answer away. That would be project portfolio.
Yep.
Which of the following approaches to define project objectives represents the individual components of the solution and their relationship to each other in a hierarchical manner?
I would go with the second one.
Good job. So from the, I know this, you can't really read this very well, but when you look in your book on page 203 and 204, here's where it's kind of defined that within Peter Gregory. And I think that's one of those ones where you definitely want to know the definitions of those, because just reading, and if you know nothing about it, just reading object breakdown structure and work breakdown structure might not be super intuitive. In which of the following project organizations does the project manager have only a staff function without formal management authority? And this one was a little bit loosey-goosey in the Peter Gregory book.
I'd say matrix.
I think what they're talking about, the key thing here is without formal.
Oh, then influence.
And the answer is influence. So here's kind of from the Peter Gregory book. The project manager has no direct management influence over the project team members. And then matrix looks like it's a little bit more formally assigned here, according to the Peter Gregory definition. The process of benefits management for information technology related projects generally does not require which of the following? Anyone want to take a stab at that one?
Bravo, budget.
Good job. This one's not super well defined in the Peter Gregory book. This is actually coming from an CISA resource right here, where they're defining benefits management. The process of benefits management for information technology related projects generally does not require determining the budget necessary for completion. This is a planning issue during a project, but it is not considered a part of the benefits analysis project, while the other choices are. Boy, we kind of finished up strong here. Which of the following is generally not considered one of the objectives of project portfolio management? This one was similar to a couple of other questions as we kind of break it down between big picture and unit.
I think the last one then.
I think why, I don't remember where I read this, but I remember reading it somewhere. I think it was in the Peter Gregory book, but the knowledge transfer was important at the project level because it gave you the ability to apply that to other projects. And so that's why, in this case, this is going to be a valid choice. In resource coordination, obviously that's going to be important if you're talking about a portfolio. And then big picture, again, prioritizing and scheduling projects, that's going to be part of the portfolio look. And then as you kind of arrive at choice A here, project sponsorship, we're looking at kind of an individual unit. So that's going to be the best choice to be the exception, I think. Project sponsorship is generally not considered one of the objectives of project portfolio management. However, prioritizing and scheduling projects, resource coordination, and knowledge transfer throughout the project is generally considered valid objectives. And that is all the questions we have for this week. It's a little bit earlier. We've got a few more slides to go here still. This slide, I think, was new to last week, but this kind of helps you with that. I think you're going to kind of run into questions regardless of the domain, where they're going to talk about, segregation of duties. So it's good to kind of have this memorized. A lot of times you run into this with, just during your PCI sessions where you're talking about separation of duties, but that is often muddied when you're in the real world, when you start talking about DevOps people and folks with many hats. But just remember on this thing, don't get too clouded with your experience. Make sure you're kind of facing the answer that ISACA wants. And here's our agenda. Actually, this is, I think I should say week 7, right? But anyways, here's that new link for those flashcards that we were talking about earlier. And for those of you who haven't seen before, most of the questions we're pulling on this come from here, and an old ISACA book. But as Sherry indicated, I didn't look at this too in depth, but when I kind of happened upon it, I thought that stuff was pretty good. So that one's kind of a new favorite of ours, I think.
Yeah, and that one actually has 3 things to each one of them. It goes through individual sections of the book, and it gives you a video. Then it gives you the flashcards, and then it'll give you a mock exam. So it's really pretty handy. And it works on your iPad, so you can do it on a plane.
If you've got Wi-Fi.
Well, yeah, there's that.
So next assignment, there's kind of the page assignments. It's going to be the second part of this domain. If you haven't scheduled your exam, please schedule, pull that trigger. And that is it for this week, unless anybody's got any questions or comments, concerns, advice. I think next Friday I will not be on this call. So I think, Sherry, are you taking this one over? Or
That's me.
Did we already tell Sean he's doing it?
We forgot to tell Sean. I've actually been meaning to reach out to Sean all week to ask him several things, one of which was whether he would be willing to lead one of our sessions. I think that was an answer.
Very cute. That sounded like a more intense buzzer than the previous one you're using.
Yeah, I didn't do favorites. I got to find them all every week.
Alrighty then. Well, if there's nothing else, thank you everybody, and you get 7 minutes back of your life.
Great, thanks a lot, Clark. If you could ship me the slides, I'll arrange to have them posted, and I'll get the recording compiled and posted. Hopefully today. If not, it'll be on Monday.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.